public and private. And it means that community members must also be empowered and held accountable. This is the mission that we have embarked upon in Chicago. And I am happy to report that we have made measurable progress in every area. Our choice is community reinvestment, professional training for our police department, as well as enhanced technology to assist the police while respecting the privacy of individuals. We in Chicago have embraced the path of community cooperation, which is at the core of our public mission. We are attempting to create police training that encourages respect and de-escalation rather than a military model which relies heavily on weaponry and jailing. Now, it will take time and steady effort to reach the results that we seek, but early indicators suggest that we are significantly lowering homicide with this partnership and all-hands-on-deck approach, and that relationships between law enforcement and the public are beginning to improve. And once again, we absolutely have to give credit and thanks and appreciation to Superintendent Johnson, who stood up as a superintendent at a time of great crisis in our city and has worked tirelessly over the tenure of his superintendency to build better relationships because it's the right thing to do. It enhances public safety and makes the mission of serving and protecting that much better. So thank you, Superintendent Johnson. But what is the role of law enforcement in this challenging terrain? How can we be most effective investing in the needs of residents? I believe that the key relies in demonstrating your legitimacy. Let's think about one of the most difficult challenges for any police chief, a police-involved shooting. Long before any trigger gets pulled, you better hope that you have a well of goodwill built up in your community. I say this as someone who used to investigate police-involved shootings. Those circumstances have the potential to ignite a city, quite literally. If your police force is not viewed with legitimacy, as a force for good, with deep ties to key community stakeholders, the ground will literally shift under your feet. This is particularly true in a time of social media. Legitimacy is also important when you come before the public in a time of crisis, whether it's a police-involved shooting or otherwise, to frame the narrative for the public for the very first time. The credibility of the messenger matters. What is said and what is not said is also important. Legitimacy comes when you stand with the community against efforts by anyone, no matter how lofty the position, who tries to demonize or vilify community residents on the basis of race, color, creed, or status. I stand before you as a former federal prosecutor, a proud former member of the police department, as well as someone who has led police reform and accountability measures. I am also a Black female, and I know firsthand the pain and isolation that comes from being discriminated against simply because of who I am. In a city like Chicago, where people hail from nations all over the world, where over 140 different languages are spoken, as mayor, I have a responsibility and solemn obligation to ensure that we remain a welcoming city. That is why I have and will always consistently back our city and our residents against hate, no matter who is the speaker. We need look no further than the recent tragedies in El Paso, in Charlottesville, the Pulse nightclub, or the synagogue in Pittsburgh. You know this. When you blow a dog whistle, all kinds of animals come out. And that makes protecting our communities from enemies, both foreign and domestic, all the more challenging. I stand against hate and with our immigrant and refugee communities and those who worship a different God because it is the only moral choice. The rule of law on which our country is built must be protected at all costs. It is under siege, make no mistake about it. But as local leaders, we can and we must step up to do our part. In a democratic society, law enforcement is different than in an autocratic state. We need guiding principles that do not merely nurture dissent, social equity, public discourse, and protest, even strikes. We need police behavior that is governed by our Constitution and respects the human rights of each individual as spelled out therein. You are here from all over the U.S. and all over the world. It's important that we bear in mind that we are not just at a crossroad here in Chicago. As we gather here today, in my estimation, law enforcement continues to endure one of the toughest periods in U.S. history. Questions of legitimacy, community, police relations, and public basic assumption about the proper role of policing continue to resonate because of legacy and more contemporary issues that make local policing all the more challenging. In our beautiful and vibrant city, we have complications, and these cross-currents are strong and fundamentally affect the primary mission to serve and protect. Here in Chicago, as in many cities from which you hail, there are many in law enforcement and in general who seek equitable treatment for all, who wish to restore respect for the rights guaranteed under our Constitution. They are, and we are. We believe that these rights and actions only make us safer. Ultimately, I hope you believe as I do, and as Peel said, what is required of policing? Quote, that the police are the public, and that the public are the police. You are us, and we are you, and we are the better for it. The more we respect one another, and the more we trust one another, the safer our communities become. As I tell all new graduates, when they have the honor of joining the Chicago Police Department, you are part of a noble tradition, one with a deep and rich history of sacrifice and service. We must keep that in mind and foremost in everything that we do, and as you discharge your responsibilities as leaders of men and women who have called to service and want to sacrifice for their communities because it is the right thing to do. I hope that you enjoy your time here and that you meet some of our thoughtful, courageous, and conscientious members of the Chicago Police Department. I thank you and wish you Godspeed.